What is going on, Jet fans? I am Matt O'Leary back with another video. It's heavy draft talk this week. We did mock draft Monday already earlier today. And today we're going to talk about some guys from the Shrine Bowl. Obviously, this week is the Senior Bowl. We being the Talking Jets crew, have Dom C and Jeremy there. Very excited to see all the content that comes out of the Senior Bowl. And naturally, you have Jeff Ulbrich, and there's a lot of Jet connections there. But you can't forget about the Shrine Bowl. It doesn't have that same juice as the Senior Bowl, but there are a couple of names that I think have stood out so far during the Shrine Bowl that the Jets should, at minimum, be interested in looking at in the NFL draft and priority free agent signings, priority UDFA signings. The first is none other than Christian Mahogany, interior offensive lineman from Boston College. He is projected to go somewhere between round 3 or round 4. He's originally from New Jersey. Hey, local product, Paramus Catholic in the house. What's going on, kiddo? He started 12 games at right guard in 2023 after missing the entirety of the 2022 season with an injury. He had an ACL suffered before the start of the season, which is I would say definitely actually part of the reason why he is projected to go in the 3rd or 4th round. There's a talented guy there. He's an absolute mauler in the ground game. This one feels like a draft nerd favorite, and that's okay. Like, everyone has those guys where, you know, not necessarily at the top of the draft, but someone you fall in love with in the mid rounds, and that's exactly what this guy is, Christian Mahogany. And the Jets have pick 10, and then they don't pick again until 72. They're not on the clock until the 3rd round. We'll see what they decide to do in free agency and the draft to, I guess, really more so free agency and the trade market, I guess, to set up what they will then have to do in the draft. But would it surprise anyone if they're taking mid-round swings on offensive linemen? And I think Mahogany is someone who has a future as a potential starter. Again, it's not a guarantee you're getting a starter wherever you pick. If you pick first overall, if you pick last. But I think it's reasonable to expect a mid-round guard to eventually play for you, and I think that's exactly what he would do. And he's been a name that stood out so far at the practices at the Shrine Bowl, and for good reason, because of his style of play. The next name that I'd like to get into is Malik Washington, wide receiver out of Virginia. He is someone who's projected to go probably somewhere around round 4. He's extremely talented. His size, though, is a big reason for why he's going in round 4-ish and not much higher. Small, 5'8", 194. But what makes him stand out to me is that he is a very good route runner. He's a slot specialist. He's someone who could just get open. Like he has good separation, good route runner. Again, you're not really going to line him up outside because of his size. But he's also a good returner. He had 274 yards as a returner this year. Yes, you have Xavier Gipson, and that's someone who is maybe a future slot for you as, you know, a New York Jet and a returner. But the Jets are in a spot where I think they should be adding a wide receiver in free agency or via trade, like as a number 2. And then I think somewhere in the mid rounds, probably not the 1st round, maybe the 3rd round, but we'll see, should be taking a swing on another depth receiver. The Jets have had pretty good success at times under Joe Douglas of finding these day 3 talented players on defense and developing them a little bit. For instance, you have UDFA, Bryce Huff, but I'll still count that one as a late guy. Michael Carter in 2021 has had a pretty big role as a starting slot corner, and a very good one at that. Ashton Davis has come on a little bit as a good special teamer, but moral of the story, they haven't had that same level of success on the offensive side of the ball. Haven't really developed someone where it's like, oh, like, hey, you found this guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, then guess what? They turned into a little bit of a player. They've had a lot of unfortunate swings and misses. LaMichael Pirine was an offensive piece they tried to make that swing on in the 4th round. James Morgan, wasted pick, lit that on fire. Who knows? Maybe Izzy Abanikanda turns into that. But there were a lot of choices on the defensive side of the ball in years gone by on day 3. Zaire Barnes is one that jumps out. Jarek Bernard, Converse, these guys who are you don't really know a lot about, guys who are not normally ranked in the top 250 on these draft boards, coming off the board. And a lot of times it's on defense. So maybe the Jets will finally pivot and go that direction on the offensive side of the ball. And then I have 2 guys who are more projected of UDFAs than someone who's going to necessarily be drafted as Mahogany, 3rd or 4th rounder. Malik Washington, probably somewhere around the 4th round. But these 2 guys who maybe late day 3 also could potentially be undrafted free agents. The first is, we'll go with the safety, Omar Brown out of Nebraska. Had an unbelievable play at practice today on an interception, but guess what? He fits the bill of something that the Jets love to do. He is a converted cornerback that is going to be going from corner to safety at the next level. Enter Jarek Bernard Converse. Enter Jason Pinnock, who they did that with, developed, and then for some reason tried to sneak him on the practice squad. They got cute. The Giants claimed him. Just silly things. But this kind of fits the bill, and safety is a little bit of a need, especially if Jordan Whitehead leaves in free agency, which I think there's a chance that he ends up doing it. As I said, the Jets love those kind of projects. And he was pretty solid, though. Allowed a 58.3 catch percentage this year, 259 yards, no touchdowns, 2 pass breakups, 1 interception, 6 forced incompletions. I'm curious to see how he would translate at the next level, but definitely someone who seems to be making that switch from corner to safety. And the last guy that I'd like to talk about is a wide receiver. So going back to the offensive side of the ball, last year, their UDFA, they had a couple of UDFA guys in Xavier Gipson, and you also had another UDFA in Jason Brownlee making the roster. That was a really big story from this past year, from Hard Knocks, from the whole thing. Both those guys, Gipson and Brownlee, making the roster. And another one who I think could potentially do that is Cornelius Johnson, wide receiver out of Michigan. He's an outside X receiver at 6'3", 208 pounds. He's a good blocker. I know that's sometimes boring to talk about for wide receivers, but it matters, especially when you're a team that, let's be honest, with Breece Hall, they're going to want to run the ball. I know they have Aaron Rodgers, but this team, they like to put an emphasis on the run game as well. It's important for these West Coast offenses to have wide receivers who can block. And he's also a special teamer, so he could have a special team role, kind of like Malik Taylor as well. But just, again, these are, at this point in the draft, all draft picks are dart throws, but especially when you get this late, you're kind of just like, all right, we're going to see if, you take something and something hits. But those are 4 guys to me who stand out that I would potentially be interested in from the Shrine Bowl. I want to hear from you. Are there any other names that you think the Jets should be looking at or should be interested from the Shrine Bowl crop? We will, again, as I mentioned earlier, we will keep a close eye on the Senior Bowl and any storylines coming out from there. But for now, that's going to do it on this video. Make sure to subscribe if you're new. Give the video a like before you go, and I'll catch you next time.